hi to everybody out there. And again, my name is Marcy Uecker. And these IEP introduction workshops are something that Family Resource Center does. I don't know if you are familiar with us. The Family Resource Center is a nonprofit-free service, and we're part of Gatepath. And I can fill anybody in later. But we are funded by grants that are state and local. And we are all parents of special needs kids who work there. I'll give you more detail on that later. We do, at the Family Resource Center, we have a warm line that's always on. You can leave a message. We get back to you within 24 hours. We have bilingual staff, English and Spanish. And we do have offices. I reside in Burlingame, that's where the main office is, but we also have an office in East Palo Alto and in Half Moon Bay now, and that's been wonderful, a wonderful addition. And we do support groups. We do IEP workshops and IFSP workshops to help parents understand this crazy journey of special education and how that works with your, whether you need help with insurance, school districts, different providers that are out there. So we help, we don't turn anybody away. If we don't know the answer, we'll find out and let you know. Because every school district is different. There's always different nuances. So in terms of my background, I've been at the Family Resource Center for almost 6 years. I'm a proud mom of 3 boys. I have a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and an 11-year-old. My 18-year-old has autism. So it's kind of unbelievable to say, winding down the whole IEP process. So we've been through it, been there, done that. He's been at private schools, public schools, back and forth. Some good experiences, some not, but we work with it. A lot of it's trial and error for our kids. And anyway, doing this job is very rewarding. Having gone through what I've gone through with my son, being with other parents is a gift. And then my contact information is here, but you guys have it also on various pieces of information, so you won't lose it. But it is on there as well. Normally I like to do introductions with everybody here, but we have so many different sites that I won't do a formalized intro with other parents. But I do know that it's been confirmed to me from Lydia that everybody is at that 3-year-old juncture getting ready for that transition. And that's what this is all about. It's the nuts and bolts of how an IEP should go as you work up toward that meeting. Okay? And you're going to have a lot of questions, even more so as you get closer to the process and after the process. You're not expected to know any of this. So we're here to have you kind of scoop back up and come and refer to us whenever you have more questions. Okay? So as I said, we're going to kind of skip introductions a little bit since I kind of have an idea of where you guys are all at. And then we'll go over, excuse me, what an IEP is, the technical definition. We'll go over the assessment plan, which is where you're at right now. We were talking about that earlier with one of the parents here. Then we'll talk about what the IEP meeting looks like, the role of the IEP case manager. There is a case manager who is your contact, and you want to make sure you know who that is. And we can talk more about that later and how you find out. Sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes it's obvious. We'll talk about your role as the parent guardian, and then I will answer any questions that you might have. So the IEP, it's an individualized education plan that's a written legal document, and it's developed for each child who's eligible for special education services. The IEP is created through a team effort, and it is reviewed at least once a year. So who may be eligible? Here's a list, and autism is something that's pretty prevalent, as you all know. And just because your child is autistic doesn't mean they're automatically going to get an IEP. It goes through what their functioning levels are and their areas of need. Most oftentimes, these kids are accommodated, but it can get a little tricky with some of our higher functioning autistic kids. And again, we're here for you as that process moves along. And it covers deaf and blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disabilities, multiple disabilities, and different learning disabilities, speech language, traumatic brain injury, and visual impairment. Now, if your child is a client of the Golden Gate Regional Center, your social worker will assist you with the transition and make sure the referral paperwork gets to the corresponding school district. If your child is not, no worries. We can help you with the process. I know Speech Goals is used to it as well. You'll contact your school district and locate the special education department and the corresponding contact, which is going to be the director of that program. More times than not, all that is listed on the school website. Sometimes the special education section is hidden a little bit, but it is in there. We can help with that too. And you're going to request a special education assessment in writing. Is everybody already done with their transition? Anybody not do it yet? Paperwork's all at your school district? Not yet? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, this will prepare you in advance. And when we say in writing, that can be an email. It doesn't have to be some super formalized letter. It can be in the form of an email. You're going to keep a copy of it. You're going to make sure they have a copy of it. You're going to send it to them and email it to them. And you're going to keep everything at that point that you're starting to work on with the school district, so you have things to reference. Starting the binder, you're probably already familiar with that anyway. Okay. And the school then has 15 days to respond to your request in some form or another. To say, we got your letter, we're going to be getting you an assessment soon. And in that letter you give them, you are going to kind of touch on your kids' major areas of need in that letter. Again, if it's coming from GGRC, they're going to include all that. And we like to have parents know about that 15-day thing, because we like them to include that in that letter. If you haven't done a letter and you're not through GGRC, they know you have 15 days to get to me. I look forward to hearing back from you. And then they know, this parent knows what's going on. This is good. These are free right here. Why does question mark after our calendar? I'm not sure. That might be a little typo, but it is calendar day. Some schools, I think there's a question mark there because there are policies at different schools. It might be business day, it might be calendar day. Check in with them. You know, be transparent and ask a lot of questions to the school district as you go. You're not expected, again, to know any of this. They are required by law to develop an assessment plan. This plan will include the type of assessments to be done and who will complete them. Speech, OT, behavioral, different categories, and we'll go through that too. And you want to make sure your child is assessed in all areas of suspected delays or disabilities. If you're satisfied with the proposed assessment plan, you'll sign it, fax it, send it back to the district representative. I pump the brakes big time at this point and tell parents, I want to see that assessment plan. There can be lots of little box checks. I gave a sample as part of the things up there, like a sample assessment plan. And it's important to really pump the brakes because you want to make sure everything's checked out. Even if your child isn't currently getting occupational therapy, maybe they got it a year ago and it's time to take another look at it. So maybe they should be evaluated again anyway. You can always scoop it up later, but it's best to get everything on that first IEP. You can go back and scoop it up, but it just needs to take a lot more time to have the school district at it. So don't rush to sign this. Oftentimes the school district will have you kind of rush to sign it only because they want to get started. It's not a manipulative tactic. But slow down. Just say, let me check in with the people that work with my child. Some other, objective viewpoints to make sure that everything has been collected. And we are happy to. It's like, just take a picture of it and send it to us. We'll just take a quick look-see. And then probably ask a few probing questions about the services your child has gotten, or even consult stuff that they're getting. It still may warrant an actual evaluation in that area. The district will then have 60 days to complete the assessment. And they'll go through the various testing zones that have been indicated on the assessment plan. And then you will hold a meeting, which is the IEP, to discuss the results of those assessments. Here's that little evaluation. It looks terrible up here. But I like parents to see it. So when you see a form with these boxes on it, oh, this is the assessment plan. It's unbelievable how many parents get the assessment plan and don't realize that was, even if we've told them. Again, because you don't know what you don't know. So I want to call this out so that you stop and breathe and not rush to sign it and just go, okay, let me go over this and make sure that I've covered all my kids' areas of need and concern, and then I'll sign and get back to you. Okay? And this goes through, a lot of these will be crossed off already before you get it. It's not like you're going to cross it off. It's already going to be on there based on that letter that you sent and or the information that was sent from Golden Gate Regional Center. But you're going to want to cross-reference yourself and make sure academic, health, intellectual, speech, motor development is occupational therapy. Social, emotional, and adaptive behavior are going to be that behavioral piece for our kids and how to help them regulate that if that's it. Post-secondary and other and alternative normally aren't, checked off. And then you sign it. And again, ask questions as you go. I strongly encourage it. I wish I had asked more questions. Now, once that assessment plan is signed and there's been an agreement on all areas of testing, the actual tests will begin to be scheduled like you're experiencing right now. The child may be observed in various settings. It could be home, classroom. Normally it's in the classroom where they have scheduled it at a school. Usually the school, just as sort of an inside thing, the school that they may be thinking of for your child. It could be your area of district, your particular school, or it could be a school that they may be really thinking of. So just kind of observe all of it as you go through it. Input is gathered from parents, teachers, medical providers, and or therapists. So I tell parents, scoop up everything. Go back to people you worked with your child a year ago, or at least question that and talk to everyone who has worked with your child to make sure you have current reports, progress reports, to make sure everything is up to date with the way where they're at that time. And a written evaluation will then be prepared and presented to the family, and this will be presented to you at the IEP. If your child is found eligible for special education, an IEP meeting will be scheduled. If your child does not qualify for services based on the results, a meeting is still going to be scheduled, and it's called a 504 plan, and we'll get into that later too. At the IEP meeting, all assessments will be presented to you. And it should happen within, like I said, 60 calendar days of signing that assessment plan. So stay on top of the school district. Things are looking like they're behind. Call your main contact at that time. It's usually the child psychologist for the district. And just to make sure that, that you're staying on track. And we tell parents, find excuses. Get those red flags out there. Let them know your name, your child's name, make some good, healthy, communicative noise to make sure that you're on their radar. There's a lot of kids they deal with. Request a copy of the assessment report before your IEP. Ideally, that would be great. If you don't get it before, it's okay that the first time you see it is at that IEP meeting. It's a little bit overwhelming. It's kind of overwhelming no matter what, especially if your child is being tested in a lot of areas. And it can be very emotional for us as parents. Just know that. And we'll talk more specifically about how emotional things can get and to ask for breaks when you are in that meeting if that's the first time you're hearing all this. And we'll also get into tips as to finding out how much time has been allotted for that IEP. Because if you're not finished, you'll reschedule and continue it, which is not unheard of at all, but it's something that you don't necessarily expect. So it's good to know. To make sure you've got childcare lined up. You don't want to take your kids to that IEP meeting. It's too hard. It's way too hard. It's hard enough as it is. And you want your partner to go with you. I would not go to an IEP alone. You can't take a friend, one of us, whatever the case may be. At this time, again, you'll go over the results of the assessments. They'll be reviewed and eligibility for special education services determined. So at the end of that, close of that meeting, they'll tell you what the offering is for your child. In terms of the IEP team members, obviously you, the parents and guardians, a general education teacher, and a special education teacher, and that is to give you an idea of how typical kids are developing as compared to how accommodations can be made for our kids. The special education director or a representative of the school district, a psychologist, a speech pathologist, occupational therapy, and additional specialists working with your child. You are okay to invite them to go, just let the school district know in advance. And then a translator if needed, and you need to give that advance request too. Excuse me. What you're going to discuss at the IEP meeting are the excuse me, I was stubborn. You want their present levels. You'll see where they're at. You'll go over that. You'll go over their areas of strength and need, both very important because we want to keep in mind their strengths because that's going to help us capitalize on their areas of need, what they're good at, what they're successful at, what they like. Those are all strength based. You'll go over the assessment results, of course, and you'll go over measurable goals in all areas of need. And that gets a little murky for us. That's just so new to see your kids' needs placed in the goals. You're probably already used to it a little bit with speech, but it gets really technical, and you're going to ask questions on this one a lot. I would definitely was not used to reading things like that. And you'll go over annual measures and benchmarks. They'll give you the offer of free and appropriate public education, or what is called FAPE, and that's the offering of maybe a special day class, maybe a regular class, along with goals and objectives for their academic day. You'll talk about modifications and accommodations in the classroom. I'll go over that a little bit later with some examples, and transportation if necessary. Signing the IEP. You probably aren't going to sign it right away. School districts don't even, a lot of times you just kind of force parents' hands to get it signed so they can get things started. No rush. There really is no rush, especially for a 3-year-old. We're talking preschool, not, getting hardcore grades right now, so there's a lot of wiggle room. So don't be forced to feel like you have to hurry and sign it. You'll want to go back and make sure you talk to your team about it and your partner and family members. However, you can sign it, and this will allow services to begin right away. However, we recommend taking it home and reviewing it with your spouse or partner and other people that work with your kiddo. Unsure of the IEP, no matter what, you're going to feel a little bit unsure because nothing's been set in motion. This is all a big sort of prediction of how they think things are going to work. So take it home, discuss it with your family or other members, get some objective viewpoints. Consider your time wisely, consult with an individual who can interpret the results of your child's evaluation or IEP offer. And that could be someone like us at the Family Resource Center. We're happy to go over it with you because we can break it down into separate parts to sort of make it a lot easier to absorb and understand. Because as a whole, it's tough. You've got the assessments, goals and objectives, and other little dangling pieces that help comprise the IEP. And sometimes having someone go through it with you makes it a whole lot easier to understand. You can also sign just for specific parts of the IEP. If you agree with most of it, and this is, while you're in the IEP, which is doubtful, or after you've looked at it, you can go back and okay, I agree to this, that, and the other, but I have questions about blah, 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 blah. And sometimes that's a follow-up meeting, but I also put a letter that kind of gives you some feedback. It's this one right here, the parent consent, on how you can approve partial or the whole thing with feedback. Just gives you some talking points. And if you do disagree with it, you'll sign that you attended, no matter what you're going to sign that you attended. And if you disagree or reject the IEP, it'll be put in writing. Again, see the sample letter that I gave you. And make sure you're informed of your child's rights and consider consulting with someone at the Family Resource Center or, again, someone who knows the IEP process and or works with your child. Am I going too fast? Okay. The role of the case manager. The IEP case manager is usually the person who you've been in touch with as you get toward the IEP. And like I said, it's usually the psychologist, child psychologist. However, in some smaller districts, it could be the speech pathologist, especially if that's your child's main area of need. When in doubt, make sure you ask who that is, because sometimes it's definitely not introduced to you as, hey, this is your IEP case manager. That's not the way it goes. So when in doubt, just make sure. And it does change sometimes. That person is the one who manages your child's IEP, does all the paperwork, schedules the meetings, communicates with all members of the team. And you are their main IEP contact as the parent. And they work in partnership with the parent and the team to develop progress reports, update goals and objectives. The role of the parent. As your child's parent, you are an integral part of the team and know your child better than anyone. We often, as we sit in these IEPs, feel very intimidated. And it's easy to forget. I have to keep a picture of my kiddo out. I don't as much anymore, but I used to. And even take one so everybody could see him too, because it just keeps things real and personal and And prepare yourself and know what you want to achieve in each meeting. And that's not so easy. It's like, how do I, set out to come up with a plan beforehand when I'm not even sure what's happening? It's just asking a lot of questions, preparing yourself, going to workshops like this so that you understand the process. And keeping in mind there's two things that I always tell parents. Not only your child's areas of need, we all are way focused on that. What our child needs, what we're trying to really help them with. But keep in mind their strengths and what they really like. That was something that stumped me when my kiddo was about 8 or 9. We were so like, go, 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 and work, 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 fix, fix, fix. I hate to admit it, it kind of makes me sick to my stomach, but you are in that mode. You're trying to get them to be able to access their peers and their friends and have a typical life. But they do have strengths and things that they really like, so focus on that. Going back to what I was saying, when I was asked what my son was really good at or what he liked, I couldn't answer it. I was so focused on all his different therapies and getting into this and getting into that. I just broke down. I was like, oh my God, I'm not even sure. I mean, I knew little things, but it was a game changer. And once I started to do that, it helped me to enjoy him more, the process more, and not just fixing him and making sure he can do this or that. So stop and ask yourself that every day. We already went over prepare yourself, reviewing records, going over things prior to the assessment to make sure that, like I mentioned in that assessment report, that they're being tested in all areas. Occupational therapy is dropped off a lot. Oh, my kid graduated, they don't need me more. But he or she has a hard time calming down and staying focused. That's still going to be an occupational thing. We're in the sensory mode, and schools don't really do that. Well, we don't really do that. But if your child can't access their academic day because they're too wiggly, which all 3 of them are really wiggly, so you'll determine it based on your own individual child, you want to make sure that isn't left out. And you want to stay in communication with the school and the teacher on a regular basis and develop those positive relationships. Again, find excuses to send them a quick little email. And if they want to have another IEP meeting or you do, don't hesitate. You get to know the team better, and I know it can be really laborious, but with practice, it'll get easier. And again, always ask questions. If you can, prepare some thoughts and questions before the meeting, and again, have an idea of what you want to achieve. If you're not sure, again, keep talking to people who work with your kiddo, because if it's your first child, it's a little harder. I had a child first, so I kind of already knew what a typical setting was like, so I kind of had a little bit of an idea. But for people that's your first, it's a lot harder. You're entering all this in a very new way. Ask how much time has been allotted for the IEP meeting, like I mentioned, because that assessment can be really big. And if you can get them before the meeting, that would be great to look over. If not, it's not. Don't reschedule or anything like that. And keep in mind, you want to build positive relationships with the team, especially the teacher and the case manager. After the case manager runs the IEP, if your child is in a special day class, I don't know if you're familiar with that term. Is that something that you guys are familiar with? We can get into it more a little bit. I'll tell you what it means, but it means that essentially that your child is in a classroom where all the other kids have IEPs and they all have special needs. And they could be hybrids too. They might not be in a special day class all day long. There will be opportunities for inclusion in elementary school, like art, recess, lunch. Those are really typical ones. PE. But your teacher, if your child is in a special day class, that as you move forward is going to be your IEP case manager and constant team player. So build that relationship. Record your IEP. And it's so easy to do now on smartphones. So record it no matter what. Just give them 24-hour notice. You'll probably never go back and listen to it, but later on to save them, should you hire a lawyer or advocate, if something starts to go sideways with your IEP, they are the ones who listen to all those old IEP recordings. You need to find anything. So just do it no matter what. Stay focused and stay positive, and keep your child at the forefront of the meeting. Like I said, take a photo with you. Call a break if you need to. It's getting too much and too emotional. I cry at every IEP. Every single time. Even if it's, most of the time it went well, but it's just a very emotional. Put your kid out there and you feel like you're just not really touching on their essence. So this is just a part of them. It doesn't speak to their whole personality, but you're there to represent that. And ask questions, ask for clarification. As they're presenting the assessments, not so much, but write down questions on the side so you can go back and ask them.
How long is it?
It depends on how many assessments your child has, but usually about an hour and a half for that first one. And oftentimes there's a follow-up schedule to finish it. But sometimes, they're 3 hours. So find out ahead of time. Yeah. But if your child has been assessed in multiple areas, you can expect a couple hours. Yeah. Some terms that you're going to hear and continue hearing, should your child have an IEP or a 504, is IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Act, free and appropriate public education, which is why we're there in the public school system. Least restrictive environment, that's one you're going to hear a lot too, and that just means that we want our children at these schools without, you want to find that perfect balance of giving them the help they need without getting them too prompt dependent. So, and least restrictive environment is dependent on that child and their particular needs. I'm not going to get into too much right now since you guys are just at the beginning, but it's a term you're going to hear. Special day class I just told you guys about, so it's in a regular public school, but it's separate because it has a special education teacher. They modify and make accommodations based on your child's learning. Inclusion. By being in a public school, your child's already sort of on tier 1, I guess you would call it, of inclusion, just to be part of that school. And it includes children with and without special needs. Accommodations are tools or procedures that provide equal access and instruction with children with disabilities. Maybe it's a kiddo with ADD or ADHD, making sure they're sitting in front, having any sort of visuals on their desk to make sure that they can follow along, giving them little breaks. Modifications are what they're taught, and maybe they don't get quite as much homework, but they have all the steps they need, but you don't want to give them, 10, problems of homework. Maybe they're just going to get 5 instead. That's an example of that or something. That's later. And in preschool, you're not going to see too many modifications in that regard. Okay. If they don't get approval for an IEP, there is something called a 504 plan. And it is just as legal, although oftentimes it's not treated that way. But it does allow your child to still have some sort of a legal plan in place if they don't know the requirements for an IEP. There's still this document. And they will follow the curriculum without changing the curriculum itself, but again, make those accommodations and changes that will help the child access their academic day. Frequent breaks, extra time on tests. This is a great website, understood.org. We follow them on Facebook too. They do a lot of incredible work around the IEP and the assessment, helping you understand it. They have a great search engine to find things on their site too. We have found wonderful things. So I highly recommend it. And that's a link to their 504 plan. Here, I went through that so fast, are some other resources that we pulled from. What else can I call out? Well, mainly right now from where you guys are at, it would be the understood.org. I would kill for it. And I won't go through all these too much, but there are other resources that we pulled from. And we do have a website that is all on here and on the information I gave you that have different resources on there and different guidelines, things for you to follow should you want to cross-reference that. And I'll make sure that I don't have anything else I want to say.
Can we email you to get a digital copy? Because it's actually hard to read.
I know, I said that earlier. I realized it after we made copies of it that it's hard to read. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Sorry about that. They came out great on mine, and then when I did that, I'm like, I have that copier. But yes, please feel free to reach out anytime. We do work part-time, each of us, so that's what give us, we're full-time parents, part-time workers, but it's all full-time. Right? But we are more than happy, when you call and just want to brainstorm. I want to throw that out there because there were times, especially in the beginning, where, again, you just don't know what you don't know, but something's nagging at you. I feel like you never feel like you're doing enough as a parent anyway, but this in particular, or just kind of nag at me, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? Let's just schedule a brainstorming. Let's just set something up. You can either come in or we'll talk on the phone, and I just start asking probing questions, and we'll get through whatever you need. More times than not, those end up being so successful because it either validates what you're doing, well, hopefully it always will, but also can just help you get back on track if you're feeling off track or just unsure. And that's normal. It's hard to get used to, but you'll get there. If I can do it, you can do it. That's what I do.
What happens if my son doesn't get qualified with the IEP, but then what we notice later on, he's having different kind of symptoms,
Which is totally normal.
Oh,
it's like
okay.
our kids don't become more autistic or more, with cerebral palsy. It's just they're developing and growing, and accommodations have to change accordingly.
When he's getting close to kindergarten, we're like, oh my God, he needs something.
Yeah, they'll reassess.
Okay, they'll reassess.
Yeah.
And you can ask for that, or they ask for it, or
It depends. If you've got a close relationship with your teacher, it might already be like, hey, yeah, let's do this IEP, and you're all in full agreement. Sometimes you have to make a formal ask. Got it. But staying close with the people that work with your kid at the school, especially knowing that they maybe just missed qualifications for an IEP,
got it.
we tell those parents, you're the ones that need to call us even more so. Stay on top of this, make sure that your child is getting all their needs met before, during, and after an IEP. But you can always go back and get one if they've been turned down once. It doesn't mean that's it. And then they have what's called a triennial assessment, and that's every 3 years. They'll do the assessment like they just did for this, where they test your child in all areas of concern.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Okay. Yes. And you can call as a parent an IEP meeting anytime. Depending on how many team members, it might be hard to get everyone. And most times you don't need everyone. But a decision maker, if you're trying to really make something change, you want that special ed director there or someone who can sign off on something that you're trying to get approved. Oftentimes there are meetings that are these little ones in between, which are fine. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. Just if you really want a big decision made, you have to make sure that the decision maker is.
I was talking to Lydia. I was like, after our meeting, I just kind of got caught off guard how many questions they were asking me, and I thought they were just assessing my child, but they were asking me all these questions. I go, why are you asking me all these questions? I already filled out all the forms. Like, you have all the information, and Regional gave you all the information. And I felt so pressured, and I was
so. Why did you feel pressured?
the psychologist was asking me tons and tons of questions. I'm like, this is very personal, and I really want to.
Good for you that you said something. Yeah.
No, I'm going to actually respond to her on email because I just kind of felt that afterwards, and I was like, I don't think this is right.
Yeah, I say transparency is the best way. We don't have to be rude about it. We can just say, hey, I felt really uncomfortable about that. Can you please clarify for me? Yeah. I did fill all these out, so I want to make sure that we're being productive. And
I just want to be representing him in the best manner because I'm the parent, and he can't really speak for himself. So.
No, we're their voice.
Yeah.
We are absolutely their voice. I mean, my son was nonverbal for a while, so, and he's verbal now, but I'm still his voice. It's not going to change. And that's a role that you grow into. It's not just this automatic switch that goes off. And when you feel like you have a team who's calling the shots, it's like, wait, I'm part of this. I want to be in this. So however you need to express that, do it. But also remind them, hey, we're a team. We're in this together. We're all going to do this together. I want my child to be successful. I want other students that are with him. I want those partnerships and friendships to be fluid or to the best that they can be. What needs to happen. It's really the way to think about it is their academic day while they're at school. And that sounds silly for a 3-year-old in preschool, but that's still their academic day. We want them to be able to access it just like the rest of their peers. What accommodations need to be made in order for that to happen? For them to stay confident, for them to even start building self-advocacy. I mean, you want that to start as early as possible. We all teach our kids that no matter what. Use your voice, use your words, all those things. Yeah. You'll find your voice. It's hard. So you just kind of had your first example of it. And it often happens like that after the fact. It's like you're kind of a deer in the headlights.
I was I go, whoa.
And write those down. Try and do what you can to help yourself focus. Everybody has their own little tricks. I did various things through different meetings just to keep myself focused. Be here now, put myself a little note out, whatever the case may be. Even a reminder to ask questions. Because then you walk out and go, oh my God, I have so many. You're going to have a ton after you walk out. But no worries. There are so many people who can help you answer. So start talking to them. The people who know your child, people who work with your child.
Yeah, so the meeting our first meeting, there was the child psychologist, the main psychologist, and then my child was right there working with the special ed teacher and the general ed teacher, and then there was, I think, a speech pathologist there. But it was so weird where this meeting is simultaneously going on at the same time, and I'm hearing him he's just not, it was his nap time and he was just not having it towards the end of it, and I couldn't focus.
On that,
I felt like
I would
they
say,
need
you know
to
what, this
separate
is really hard for me. Why don't you, can we step out in another room while you guys?
I should have asked for that because I couldn't.
Well, again,
focus.
you don't know. You don't know what you're.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
get
didn't
there.
know
So
what to expect.
start following your intuition a little bit
Yeah.
and speak up when you need to go. Wait a minute, this isn't
This
working
wasn't
like
working.
this.
Yeah. And I just couldn't I just feel like I couldn't respond in the manner I should have been responding.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't have been able to either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially
sure
if you feel
like
it's really vulnerable to be questioned and then at the same time watch your child being assessed when you don't want them to be judged.
Yeah.
That's such a delicate.
He's bringing me
spot.
slices of cake to me,
And you're like, wait a minute, but he can do this, but he can do that.
like fake cake, you know?
The goodness is, you do. I see. There's a benefit to that. You do want these people to see you with your child. You want to see how they see you without your child. So none of it is information loss.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
And you can go back and then re-ask things.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Tweak things.
I'm going to follow up with an email because I was talking to Lydia. I was like, I should follow up with an email and just kind of lay out like my thoughts and feelings, and then remember any questions that during the meeting to respond. And also, you can ask for copies of things that you filled out.
Oh, always.
So I'm going to ask for a copy of, I believe it was I think initially regional. I don't think they sent the OT evaluation, so I followed up on email with OT evaluation, and then I'm going to ask for the evaluation thing or questionnaire that they had me fill out. It took a long time to fill out because I was so distracted.
It can be challenging. Again, you could always, some sort of objective person who knows your child but maybe isn't quite as emotionally attached as you are to help you go through that. And we're used to helping parents with that too, because some of it doesn't seem applicable.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this seems like a really big question for such a little person. Do I have to answer this? And you just come to the best of your ability and where your child is at. But sometimes it gets overwhelming in that regard too. You just need someone to help guide you through it for clarification.
And sometimes the questions are very obscure. You're like, what is this even mean?
Some of them aren't applicable. I know.
I feel like I don't think this even applies to him, but I'm just going to say none or don't know kind of
And
thing.
you can stop and ask, and that's a question for us that we can help with, or Lydia too, because we're used to seeing these evaluations.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get a copy.
First time, all this first time stuff, it gets really murky and really confusing. And again, to try and separate your emotions is challenging.
I'll definitely be emailing you.
Please do. Again, I would have killed for it. I was like, yeah, it was tough. That first one especially. Oh my gosh. Even if you get like this great IEP, and oftentimes they look great. And this is all sort of a proposed plan, and you don't know until you get started. So there's going to be tweaks after too. So oftentimes when you're in that IEP, and say you've finished it, you're at the end. Like, all right, yeah, team, this is going to be great. We're all in. But guess who has to make sure it's really happening in the end? You guys do. And we're not there. So how are we going to make that happen? Keeping in communication with that teacher, the people on the team, because they're your eyes on the other end. Your kid is not going to come back and tell you, speech was great today. We did this in occupational therapy. Not going to happen. So make sure there's some sort of communication piece that you're doing with the teacher and the therapist. And that's going to look different. Again, we're going into, when you're talking about your kid's strengths, we're talking about the teacher too. What is the best way you, Mr. or Mrs. Teacher, like to communicate? Emails, phone calls? I had something different each year, depending on the teacher. Yeah. And so find out the best way they like to communicate and make sure you're staying in communication.
And
Sometimes
email is the best.
Usually that's the best. But some teachers, especially if their child is in a special day class, they'll have a sheet already, and then they'll fill out how their day went. Yes, they have speech and give little reactions to things. Some teachers already have like a set template. If they don't, hey, go to understood.com. They have those things. They can kind of help get you prepared. So believe it or not, they have checklists, communication things that you can find. And yeah, find out the way that teacher best works and operates. Get to know the principal. Find excuses to be on campus. I can't tell you the amount of times, and I know it's hard if you're a working parent, but there are opportunities to get on campus and get to know, everybody at that school. But I would find out things. You end up getting people who love your kiddo who don't work with your kiddo. Janitor, the grounds person, loved my child. Oh, August did so great today. You should have seen my speech. I found out so much from that guy, and I so appreciated it. And so it can be anybody at the school, but you do find these magical people who just love up your kid, and you just bring information. Nurture those. Sometimes it's just another kid in the class. There's these magical little kids that gravitate to our children, and it's the sweetest thing. Really sweet. Yeah. So you're going to meet some incredible people along the way. I know this is a challenging process, but if someone would have told me about the people I would have met along the way, it shocked and brings you to tears, but it's pretty amazing. So focus on that too. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, great. Okay.
From every good city office.
Okay, super.
If you can read them out.
Yeah, I'll read it out loud. The first one says, what can parents do if the assessment determines that no services are needed, but feel that services are needed? Definitely get the guidance of someone who knows the IEP process, whether it's your CEPTAR, a family resource center person, someone at speech goals, to go over all of that with you before you go back with a rebuttal. To say, I don't agree with this because of, and you're going to put your thoughts down and you're going to cross-reference them with your child's area of need that you're concerned about. Like, hey, there's this thing in the assessment and there's no corresponding goal or objective. And if that led to them feeling like your child doesn't need services, that needs to be brought back up again. And ideally, what you'll do is present that back after you've had someone help you with it and possibly schedule another meeting to go over it further. So that'd be the first step. I hope that answers your question. And if need be, what it might end up being is turning into a 504 instead of an IEP, which oftentimes doesn't get as much love as an IEP does or attention, but it should be. It's still legal, so treat it as such. A 504 is not a bad turn of events. It's still very workable. And again, you are the one that has to make sure it's happening, that the team is communicating, and that it's working. Okay. What options do parents have if they don't want to deal with school district at all? You don't have to sign any of this, and you can decline it and go thank you, but no thanks, and walk away and go to a private school if that's what you intend to do. But at any point in time, keep it positive, by the way. If you decide this is just not right for us at this time, we'll be in touch in the future. You want to keep that. You don't want to burn any bridges because you can go back. And oftentimes parents do. Like I said, I did. But we went back and forth depending on what my child needed between private and public school. And even if they do go to a private school, you will still meet with your school district, have an annual IEP. And oftentimes, the school district, I didn't hear from them, and I'd call them up, oh, it's time for the annual. Oh, right. And that's just, you're not on the radar because you're at a private school. But they still do it, and that's still an important document to have, because some parents will go to a private school and think, oh, I'm done with that. But what if all of a sudden it comes upon you that, hey, my community school is pretty great right now, and it's part of my community and our neighborhood, and you want your child re-entered back in. If you keep up with those annual IEPs, it will make it so much easier. So never just poo-poo it away permanently. I hope that answers your question. Did you guys have any questions based on those? Any clarification?
Yes. They go to like a daycare when they turn 3. They're still going to the district. If you start service.
Well, it depends on your child's day. So oftentimes preschool is like a half day, and then maybe they'll go to a child care facility after. That IEP doesn't follow you to a private child care center.
So it's only start from their preschool.
If they're at a public preschool, correct. Sometimes, and it doesn't happen very often anymore, the school district pays for your child to go to a private school setting, and then they'll pay for it. But those are our kids who are far more impacted if they're nonverbal and they need AAC devices to help them communicate. It just depends on your child's age, if that school can't accommodate it. but more times than not, they're going to find a way to do it. Does that make sense? Preschool, it gets more intense as they enter elementary school at kindergarten. And preschool, yeah, it can get a little murky if you are putting a hybrid of services together for your child. I did, for my son, when he was 3, he was just at a private school getting early intervention services. That's because there were no preschools in the school district. As we got him more involved in preschool, by the time he was 4 and he was starting to talk, and we wanted to be around his typical peers, I added because again, there was no school district preschools, a private preschool that happened to be right next door where he got. And then I just did a hybrid myself, and I paid for it.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to clarify.
But
so when
it
they're
all
3 years
depends
old,
on-
they're not getting an actual IEP yet.
Oh yes,
But
they are.
Okay.
They are. You can get a child fully qualified, meets all the criteria, even gets a school placement because there are public preschools now. What school district are you in? Yeah, San Bruno has a preschool program. I don't know the details of it, and it changes every year for most of the school districts, because the population of the kids wax and wane, and they'll open up other classrooms if they need to. But sometimes your child is in a regular preschool class with an IEP, and they'll have accommodations accordingly, or they're in a special day class preschool. And sometimes it's not in your assigned school. They're sent to a different school that has that special day class. Not the school that you think they would just automatically go to in your neighborhood. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it all kind of depends on the school district you're in and your child. Okay, here is the next question. What are reasons to reject or partially accept an IEP? To reject it, you can do a formalized letter saying you reject it, or you can do it there on the spot, but oftentimes you're going to want to walk away, just sign that you were there, and come up with a letter and having that state specifically, just a bullet point, however, order you want to go in, to say why you don't agree with their offering. More times than not, you're going to agree with the assessment. You're going to look at that assessment and go, yes, this is my child. It's the services they offer that you're more than likely going to disagree with. And we can, help you cross-reference the assessments to make sure there are goals and objectives that are possibly more workable than what the school has given you. And so some things you can accept and some things you can partially accept to get started. Like say you agree with the speech goals, but you're not sure in the classroom placement. Maybe they've said, here's a special day class we want to put your child in, and you're going to get speech and you're going to get OT. And oftentimes what they do after that is schedule a visit to that classroom. So you're not just going to start sight unseen. You're going to go see it. You're going to see the school. You're going to see the classroom. And upon that, then you'll say, yes, I'll sign for the classroom, or I'm not going to sign for the classroom. I didn't like that, but I'm ready to start speech and OT. And you'll take your child up to the school to get those until you work out what needs to be worked out for the classroom placement. Maybe it's looking at another classroom, really talking to that team and being transparent about why or why not you think that's not a good fit for your child. So I hope that answers that question. Did that answer it for you guys? Partially accepting and signing for services, partially rejecting. They can happen simultaneously. You just have to get very specific. Did you have something?
Yeah, I'm wondering if, this is from emergency parents, I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if they're trying to figure out what are valid reasons and what are common reasons.
And it varies. It just depends on the child. That's a hard question to answer because normally there's a very specific reason based on that child's area of need as to why that might be happening. Or if you have a real problem with when you went to visit the classroom and you didn't like the teacher's style. I went to go visit a classroom once and the class was a mess. Just the noise of the way it was organized, if you will. I felt like I was falling into ADD. It was like, this is crazy. I can't focus on anything happening because the room is such a mess. Things were kind of just haphazardly thrown, and there was stuff everywhere. And I knew my child right away. I'm like, he'll be gone. He'll be looking at all that, and he will not be paying attention to the teacher. So that was a big deal, and I included that. I just said, I don't think the classroom is appropriate because of the fact that it's too big. There was a lot going on. I didn't call out, oh, this teacher's really messy. I just said, there's a lot going on in the classroom. There's a lot of visual noise. And we'll lose him. He won't focus, and he'll wander off. which is great. He's curious. There's a strength you want, I know. But if we can't get him to sit down and focus because there's too many, exterior things happening. So, advice for children in private preschool needing services, and they won't be in public school for 5. So say you've gone through the IEP process and you've decided, I don't want to accept your IEP because I'm going to do private placement for my child. It kind of just sits there, that IEP, because the private school, it's their choice to take a look at that IEP, yes or no. I would ask them ahead of time if they're going to honor the IEP. Some do, some don't. Most don't. They're just going to go on what your child needs while they're there, and you'll come up with kind of your own plan for accommodations and modifications with them. It's far more formalized if they stay in the public school with regard to following that IEP because it is a legal document. They have to. So it either goes on hold or it's the school's choice to decide if they want to follow it. Does that answer that question, do you think?
Yeah, it's actually a specific client that I work with. They do want to continue services. They did the assessment and then were told, we won't be able to.
The private school said we're not going to accommodate PIP. That's very common. So you need to have your own meetings with the private establishment to find out how accommodations are going to be made and followed up to make sure. And I had to do that. My child, he was public school until 3rd grade, and then we switched to private. And it was definitely a change that, again, it's that part of you that doesn't have the experience where you just assume, oh, they're in a private school, everything's going to be taken care of. No. There's no perfect school for any of our kids. There's just not. You're always going to have to make, even in the best of circumstances, accommodations and modifications. Even learning to communicate with the teacher to make sure you're understanding what's happening. I found that to be very difficult for some years.
So if they go to private, they don't have to. Private doesn't
They don't have to honor the IEP. It's just a public school thing. But you can still use it as a tool, especially for you. You can't make them sit down and go through it with you, but you can refer back to it to make sure that what's ever being accommodated at that private school is being hit on, especially the major areas of concern. And oftentimes, it can be that you go to a private school that doesn't accommodate special needs. So you're going to have to work with however they do that and kind of, put together your own plan with them based on how they do things. And that's another learning curve that I found very challenging. But you get through it. You figure it out and just take your time and ask questions. And sometimes it seems so urgent. But looking back, if I could slow down during those preschool years, it would have been a lot more good. I would have learned a lot more instead of rushing through it to hurry and fix my kid, hurry and, have them catch up. Throw that away. But we don't want them to catch up. We just want them to be able to access their day, however that may look, that they're happy, that they're feeling comfortable, that they're learning at the best ability that they can. So this is just 3-year-old preschool. Don't sweat it. Don't sweat it.
After them start to start break and wait until 5.
Yeah, for most kids, it just depends. Are you asking?
That's for myself. No, that's my
Yeah, I think, that's my opinion. Yes, the more we can include our kids right away, not only for them, but for other kids too, if they have special needs. The rest of the world, meet us halfway. This is what a child with autism looks like, and I'm proud of him, and I'm gonna, make sure he's in there. Sometimes it's really hard to do, just having your presence. Yeah, in terms of, positive reasons to it. And that said that they won't be in the public school till 5, and if they're preschool, so you're going to have a big transition meeting as they go to kindergarten too. And it feels kind of just as big as that first IEP that you're going through now as they transition to preschool. I remember that being a very big deal. And got my kiddo all ready. And oftentimes our kiddos who have IEPs and they have a diagnosis of special needs, you get into or to kindergarten and you've done all this great planning. It oftentimes goes great. And then you get there and you're so shocked to see there are other kids with special needs who have more needs than your kid. They're like, oh my God, we worked so hard for this. And he knows his alphabet, his colors, he can attend and sit in story time. And now the teacher's really distracted because there are other special needs kids that parents are unaware, there's no diagnosis. So then you're kind of having that battle too, of a kiddo who might have tough behaviors in class, and all the kids end up focusing on that kid. That was a real big, like, oh my gosh, we do want to struggle. I forget there are the things that are completely out of our control, and you'll just have to shift again. Yeah, it fascinated me. Something I was not expecting, but it happened. There was anything else I can clarify? I think I got it from these questions.
So yeah.
Like that, but even just to go, okay, I want to make sure I've got everything straight. Can we just have a sort of check off list meeting thing? Whatever you need.
Do parents like schedule time with you at the resource center?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Instead of just a phone call?
Oh yeah, whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Oftentimes, especially at this 3-year IEP, we meet in person. Especially after the IEP, we can be of most help prior to the IEP and after with the documentation to show you how to read it and cross-reference the assessment with the goals and objectives to make sure everything has been scooped up. Because oftentimes there can be, one speech goal, but it's picked up like 5 areas of need, but only one goal. And they're going to be pretty obtuse in the beginning. Again, we're talking about 3-year-olds. So they're going to be really big obtuse ones at first. But as you move through the process, you're going to start whittling things down to get more specific as your teacher, as your speech therapist gets to know your child better, to see how they react to the methods they're putting into place. So I do want to say one thing that I forgot to put in here is when you're in that IEP, I started to talk about it, you're going to want to schedule a follow-up 30-day. Most school districts do that now. In 30 days, we're going to meet again to make sure everything we just put in there is working. More times than not, there's going to be tweaks because, again, we're making projections and assumptions based on the assessments. Once they get you into class, they could be a whole thing. Because, again, that was only a very superficial part of your child. Once you get the personality in there and the disposition, it can change everything. And you don't know what the other kids in class are going to be like either, and what sort of chemistry there is between the teacher and your child. So after 30 days, we often tell parents to make sure that an informal 30-day IEP has been scheduled a month after school has started. Okay, what can we tweak? And there are definitely going to be things. But that gives a lot of comfort because that first day of school, you're going to want to pull that teacher aside right away. How did it go? Tell me this, tell me that. Let's give it 30 days. Let them get to know your child. Let everybody just settle in a little bit. That's okay. Give yourself a break too. Just kind of exhale. Let 30 days. Stay in that communication, but it doesn't mean that first day that you're all over the teacher asking questions. But you will, in that first IEP meeting, go back to, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Teacher, what's the best way you'd like to communicate so that we can stay in touch? And they might say, you know what, I don't want to talk that much until after 30 days until I've got to know your child. I think that's okay. But you'll want to say, but if I have questions, I can come and ask, right? What's the best way to do it? Should I send you an email? Can I try and talk to you after class? I'm trying to figure this out too, and I'm going to make mistakes. Just be transparent. But that 30-day informal IEP is so brilliant. And a lot of them automatically do it. If they don't, make sure you ask. If you forget in that meeting, it's okay. You send an email to that case manager. Say, hey, can we make sure this was put in the IEP notes that I want a 30-day? So, yes.
We have another question from Redwood City. It's a little bit different to what we've been talking about, but I guess I have a parent here, and they're just wanting to know if you have any tips on balancing everything in general, how to avoid burnout.
It's hard.
Yeah, what you would.
That's a good question. It depends on you and what helps you. So you're going to get to know yourself in a whole new way too. taking a nap, exercising, going for a walk. Put your head in the sand for a while. Like, this is overwhelming. I feel frozen right now. That's okay. We've all felt frozen before. To force yourself out of that, does it work? No. So what can you do to take care of yourself? It's going to be more important than ever. I was not very good at taking care of myself in that way. I didn't really even understand what it meant. But you figure it out pretty fast, and you've got to be real with yourself on what does work. And sometimes just unplugging from everything and just focusing on your kid. We're going to have fun today. If it got overwhelming, I probably should have canceled some sessions or shortened some sessions or just grab my kids and got out of the house and take them to the park. Change things up. Don't be afraid to do it. You're not going to lose time. I was so afraid of losing time to, again, fix my child, to make sure that he was less autistic than he was, and that's just, I'm being really honest, and I know I'm not the only parent that thinks that. But if I could have just, let's just enjoy the day. Forget about all this stuff, If you feel that way, you should just do it. So that's one thing I wish I could go back and tell myself when I have those moments of feeling overwhelmed, scared. So let's just try the music and dance. Right? So it's individual. And support groups help. I will say that to that person too. And not just our support group, but any support groups. Talk to other parents, get a different perspective, or just be in a position where you could help someone. It's just so rewarding to go, oh my gosh, I've gone so far. I didn't realize I could help that person. And my child and I have come a long way. Or not. The help can go either direction. And I personally love support groups for that reason right there. To connect with others and just say, okay, I'm not alone. Having these crazy thoughts about this, that, and the other. It's a nice reality check. And that's also your special needs PTA. That can operate very much like a support group as well. Especially if you find parents who have either a similar profile to your child and find out from them what's working and what's not, or someone who has the same insurance as you do, or same providers as you do, you can get great tips from each other, especially if you're in the same school district. So get to know that special needs PTA big time. Someone can tell you, oh, this teacher works best this way, or this person's kind of, whatever the nuances are. It can be great inside information for other parents who are already in the process of that district.
Is there like a meeting at your resource center, like with IEP parents that is open for people to attend?
Not on a regular basis, but we do have an autism support group that's general, and we meet the first Tuesday of each month, and you can see it on our website, or you can email me and I can let you know. We have a general support group that's Spanish speaking, and then we have groups in Half Moon Bay and East Palo Alto. But in our autism group, we talk about things that aren't just autism related. We talk about the IEPs in the school districts. In fact, more times than not, that's what we're talking about. How do I deal with my school district on blah, blah, blah? It doesn't matter. Our kids are all, regardless of their diagnosis, getting similar services at the school, whether it's speech, OT. It's obviously going to look a little different depending on that child, but the information you get is invaluable with just how to maybe approach something. The school district that you're struggling with, some parent can have a story that will help you break through that. Or, hey, call this person instead. Yeah, it's really valuable.
I find a lot of my resources from just talking with parents.
Parents are the best resource. I'm telling you now. It's true.
I mean, like me, I talked to a parent. I enrolled my son with Gatepath actually.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
So I'm very familiar with Gatepath, and that's how my entire journey started before speech holds. And that's where I found out, talking to a parent there about Golden Gate Regional. It wasn't my pediatrician; it was a parent there that gave me all the information.
Like I said, I've been it for 18 years now, and going to the monthly support group because I help facilitate it. I learn something every month, and I'm blown away by it. Still, it doesn't matter where you are in the process. Yeah.
Is there like a Facebook group? Do you know of any
We have a Facebook page, but not necessarily a group.
Okay.
There is a group. It's called Parent Clips, PPSNK, Peninsula Parents Special Needs Kids, and they have a Yahoo group that has an ongoing moderator and panel. You can ask questions, or you can go look at archived information. And I would go to that website, PPSNK, and you'll go through a moderator to get approved to be on their group, and then it'll allow you to the group, and then you've got access to all these other special needs parents with this great information.
Okay, great.
That's a great one. That's a good question. Thanks for asking. We like to share that with people. Because we don't have an ongoing sort of moderated group on Facebook that Family Resource Center has. We just have, we post our information for what we have available and finding ways to get you connected to those resources.
Good.
Yeah. Good. All right. If you're going to have more questions, feel free to call or email. That's normal. Yeah.
I feel like we have a lot of work ahead of us.
One day. I can't stress that enough.
Doesn't it?
Don't do anything with what I gave you today. Just let it.
I'm just absorbing it. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I just don't want to overwhelm my child. I just really want to take it one step at a time.
If you stay focused on what they like and what they're good at, that really helps keep you on track. That really, I get to reset instead of, hurry, fix, hurry, fix. It's like, wait, this is for him, about him.
Yeah.
And I want it to be with him. And it made it even just much more of an enjoyable process. And sometimes that's a hard question to answer. What does my kid like? Well, in the beginning, he played
That's what they asked you.
with a string on the floor. How do I extract things from that? Yeah.
They totally asked you that, and I'm like,
I'm not sure I went to my
husband
husband and say, okay, what does he like to do? What? Mind blown. I'm with him every day, but I can't answer this stupid question.
I was like that.
Go to the people who work with them. They are so good about being objective as therapists.
Yeah.
What do you think he's good at? Tell me what he likes. I just, all I can think of is the color yellow right now. I don't know what else that is. But, they're talking to those people because they see your kid in a different light. And to answer a big obtuse question like that about your child can sometimes be so petrifying. You just don't have a good answer.
Yeah. I just feel like I don't want to have rose-colored glasses in a sense, talking about my child. I just don't want to set myself for failure. Am I saying too positive things about him? Which,
Well, that's why the observations are good too. If you're having a bad day, great. You want them to see your kid at their worst. You want to make sure there's, things that address that if that's a typical thing for them.
Yeah.
So don't try to control that assessment. Let it happen. Let it happen. And if your child is being very difficult, I say great.
Yeah. He had one meltdown. So I was happy for them.
They're babies. They're not even
I was happy for them to see that.
They're babies.
He was seriously all on the ground.
3-year-olds are hard. Really hard. And if they're having a meltdown, that's kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
So to make them look all perfect, no matter how we dress them, they're still going to show their true colors. So let them do it. Let them do it. And if you're overwhelmed, let them know that too. Just say, you know what? Like you just said, you gave a great example. Why are we all in the same room? I need to go out here. I can't.
Yeah. I wish I just stopped at saying I need a 5-minute break.
And sometimes they don't think about it either. They're trying to check it off their list because they've got maybe 10 more assessments that day. Not our problem, but it's still
their quota. They're going for the quota.
Let's just slow down the pace a little bit. Do that.
Yeah.
Again, talking about babies, 3-year-olds. We can reschedule. That's my point. It's not like we're just going to let it go. We can reschedule. And if you stay on top of it with them, they'll stay on top of it. It's hard because you're going to vacillate between good cop, bad cop. I hate doing that. I still don't like it. But you feel like you've got to step up. It's hard because you don't want them to have a bad impression of you or your child if they're going to be teaching them the whole day, spending the day with them. It's really hard. So be transparent, ask questions, find ways to communicate that no matter what, when you walk away, it's reparable, that you can, move on. But it is going to happen. You'll be put in some very difficult positions, and it brings you to your knees. But you'll get through it, especially if you're honest with yourself and the people who work with your kid. It's an emotional process. And thankfully, most of these teachers, therapists already know. And as soon as you're transparent, you're like, you're right. Okay, let's, whatever the case may be, start this over, try this over, reintroduce something else. You're going to make mistakes. You are going to. It's okay. Thanks for coming, you guys.